The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. I was underneath my work van at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, wrestling with a transmission leak that had been bleeding me dry for weeks, when I heard my 15-year-old daughter Gina's voice cut through the thin walls like a rusty blade. "Dad, Mom says you're extra weight. She's moving on with someone better. Erik's here half the time anyway." I rolled out from under the van so fast I cracked my skull on the oil pan. The wrench clattered across the concrete floor of my commercial cleaning company's garage, echoing in the silence that followed. Through the window connecting the garage to our house, I could see Talia's silhouette in the kitchen, her perfectly manicured hands gesturing wildly as she argued with our daughter. 23 years. 23 years I'd been building this business from nothing, scraping together enough money to buy our first house in this Rust Belt town where dreams slowly fade. 23 years of coming home covered in other people's dirt, so my wife could play interior decorator to the rich folks on the hill. I wiped my hands on an old shop rag and walked through the connecting door into our kitchen. Talia was leaning against the granite countertop I'd paid for with 12-hour days and weekend emergency calls, her auburn hair pulled back in that severe bun she wore when she meant business. "Jordan," she said, not looking up from her phone, "we need to talk." Gina rolled her eyes and stomped upstairs, her combat boots thundering on the hardwood floors. The kid had been treating me like garbage for months, ever since Talia started filling her head with poison about how I was holding them back from their true potential. "About what?" I asked, though I already knew. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the way she'd started dressing like she was auditioning for a magazine spread, instead of living in a working-class neighborhood where half the houses had vinyl siding and chain-link fences. Talia snorted, actually snorted, like I was some kind of joke. "I've been thinking about divorce for a long time. I'm tired of you." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, but I kept my face neutral. In this business, you learn to hide your reactions. Rich people don't want to see their cleaning guy having feelings. "Tired of me," I repeated slowly. "Care to elaborate?" She finally looked up from her phone, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not frustration, but contempt. Pure, undiluted contempt. "Look at yourself, Jordan. Look at this place." She gestured around our kitchen like it was a crime scene. "I've outgrown this. I've outgrown us. My clients live in houses worth more than you'll make in 10 years, and they treat me like an equal, like someone who matters." "Someone who matters," I said, "as opposed to the guy who pays for all this." "You think writing checks makes you important?" Talia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I make my own money now. Good money. I don't need you anymore." That's when I knew. Not suspected, not worried about, but knew with absolute certainty that my wife was cheating on me. The defensive tone, the sudden financial independence, the way she kept glancing at her phone like she was expecting a message from someone more important than her husband of 19 years. "Who is he?" I asked. "Who is who?" But her face flushed red, and she clutched her phone tighter. "The guy you're screwing, the one who's been filling your head with ideas about how much better you deserve." For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Then her expression hardened, and I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with disappear completely. "His name is Erik Blaine. He's a real estate broker. He drives a Tesla and lives in a downtown penthouse, and he treats me like a queen instead of a servant." She paused, savoring the moment. "And yes, I've been seeing him for 6 months. 6 months. While I was working 60-hour weeks to keep our business afloat, while I was paying for her fancy business cards and designer clothes, she was spreading her legs for some smooth-talking real estate shark. "I want you out," she continued. "Tonight. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I want half of everything, the business, the house, the accounts, all of it." I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized I was staring at a stranger. The woman who used to pack my lunch and kiss me goodbye every morning had been replaced by this cold, calculating creature who thought she could destroy my life and walk away rich. "No," I said quietly. "Excuse me?" I said no. "You want a divorce? Fine. But you're not getting half of anything. You're not getting a dime." Talia's laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "We'll see about that. I know exactly what you're worth, Jordan. I've been keeping track." "Have you now?" I pulled my phone out of my pocket and opened the voice recorder app. "Say that again, about keeping track of what I'm worth." Her face went pale. "You can't record me without my permission." "Actually, I can. Ohio's a one-party consent state, which means this entire conversation has been perfectly legal." I held up the phone. "Including the part where you admitted to adultery." "You bastard." "Maybe. But I'm a smart bastard, and you just made the biggest mistake of your life." I walked back into the garage, my mind already racing through everything I needed to do. Talia thought she was smart, thought she'd been planning this whole thing while I was too stupid to notice. What she didn't realize was that I'd been watching her for months, documenting every suspicious phone call, every unexplained absence, every lie she told about working late. She wanted to play hardball? Fine. But she was about to learn that you don't survive in the cleaning business for 2 decades without knowing how to handle dirty situations. 3 days later, I was crouched behind a dumpster in the parking lot of the Riverside Charity Foundation's annual fundraiser, watching my wife hang all over Erik Blaine like a cheap suit. The event was being held at the old Mackenzie Mansion on the hill, one of those sprawling Victorian monstrosities that the rich folks in this town loved to rent out for their self-congratulatory circle jerks. Talia had decorated the entire place, of course. She'd been working on it for weeks, staying out until all hours to get everything perfect. Now I knew why she'd been so dedicated to this particular project. Erik Blaine was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average height, smooth where I was rough around the edges, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payment. He had the kind of artificially white teeth that screamed expensive dentistry and the kind of fake tan that came from a salon rather than honest work in the sun. I'd volunteered to help with the setup, telling Talia I wanted to support her career. She'd been so surprised by my sudden interest that she'd actually agreed. What she didn't know was that I'd spent the last 3 days installing a GPS tracker on her car and setting up hidden cameras in our house. The things you learn about surveillance when you clean office buildings for private investigators. I watched Erik whisper something in Talia's ear that made her giggle like a teenager. They were standing near the mansion's ornate fountain, surrounded by the kind of people who thought a $1,000 donation made them saints. Rich housewives in designer dresses, lawyers in expensive suits, doctors who charged $300 to tell you to take 2 aspirin and call them in the morning. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "Your wife's a real piece of work. You should hear what she's saying about you." I looked around the parking lot, trying to figure out who might have sent it. A few other volunteers were loading supplies from their cars, but nobody seemed to be paying attention to me. Another text. "Check the garden behind the mansion. Bring your phone." Against my better judgment, I made my way around the side of the building. The garden was one of those elaborate affairs with hedge mazes and marble statues that rich people thought made them classy. I found a bench hidden behind a row of perfectly manicured rose bushes and sat down to wait. 5 minutes later, I heard voices approaching. Talia's laugh, followed by Erik's deeper chuckle, and then a third voice I didn't recognize. "Telling you, Vivian, this is perfect timing," Talia was saying. "Jordan's so clueless, he actually thinks I'm going to stick around for another 20 years of mediocrity." "And you're sure about the financials?" The third voice was female, crisp and professional. "He can't hide assets from you? Please, the man keeps his business records in a filing cabinet in our garage. I've been photocopying everything for months. Bank statements, tax returns, client contracts. He's worth way more than he pretends to be." Erik's voice was smooth as silk. Once the divorce is final, we can start looking at properties. I've got my eye on a penthouse downtown that would be perfect for us. Us. My wife was already planning her new life with this asshole, using my money to fund it. What about the daughter? Vivian asked. Gina will come around, Talia said. She's 15. She'll go wherever the money is. And once she sees how much better our life is going to be, she'll understand why I had to leave her father behind. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Every word, every laugh, every casual discussion of how they were going to destroy my life and steal my daughter. The beauty of it is that Jordan will never see it coming, Erik said. He's so busy playing blue-collar hero that he doesn't realize his wife is way out of his league now. By the time he figures out what's happening, it'll be too late to stop it. To new beginnings, Vivian said, and I heard the clink of champagne glasses. To getting everything we deserve, Talia agreed. I sat there for another 10 minutes, listening to them plan my destruction like they were discussing the weather. They talked about selling the house, liquidating my business, even taking out loans against my equipment to maximize the cash they could walk away with. When they finally wandered back toward the mansion, I stayed hidden in the garden for another hour, my mind racing through everything I'd heard. Vivian was obviously Talia's business partner, the one who'd been helping her set up her interior decorating business. I'd met her a few times at company parties, a sharp-faced woman with calculating eyes who always looked at me like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Now I knew why. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. There's more. Meet me at Murphy's bar tomorrow night at 9. Come alone. I looked around the garden again, but I was still alone among the roses and marble statues. Whoever was feeding me information was playing this very carefully. I drove home that night, with my head spinning. Talia was already in bed when I got there, pretending to be asleep. I went into my home office and started going through our financial records, looking at everything with new eyes. She'd been busy, very busy. Credit cards I didn't know about, a separate checking account at a different bank, even a safety deposit box she'd rented without telling me. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer, systematically preparing to take me to the cleaners while I was too trusting to see it coming. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed I was stupid. I might be blue-collar, but I wasn't born yesterday. And I'd spent the last 20 years building a business in a town where half the people would stab you in the back for $1 and a beer. You don't survive in that environment without learning how to protect yourself. I opened my laptop and started making phone calls. My accountant first, then my lawyer, then the private investigator who'd taught me about surveillance equipment when I was cleaning his office. If Talia wanted to play dirty, I was going to show her what dirty really looked like. Murphy's bar was the kind of place where honest working people went to forget their troubles, and dishonest people went to plan new ones. It sat on the corner of Industrial and Main, a brick building with neon beer signs in the windows and sawdust on the floors. The kind of place Talia wouldn't be seen in, which made it perfect for clandestine meetings. I arrived at 8:50 and ordered a beer, positioning myself at a corner table where I could watch both the front door and the back exit. The place was half empty, just a few regulars nursing their drinks and watching a baseball game on the television above the bar. At exactly 9 o'clock, a woman walked in and headed straight for my table. She was maybe 35, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing jeans and a leather jacket. Pretty, but in a hard-edged way that suggested she'd seen more than her share of trouble. "Jordan Wells?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from me. "Depends who's asking." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "My name's Casey Murphy. I'm a private investigator, and I've been watching your wife for the last 2 months." "Watching her for who?" "That's where it gets interesting." Casey signaled the bartender for a drink. "I was hired by Erik Blaine's ex-wife. Apparently, your wife isn't his first married conquest. Linda Blaine suspected her husband was cheating again and wanted proof for their divorce proceedings." "Their divorce proceedings?" "Oh, yeah." Erik's been married for 12 years. Has 2 kids and a mortgage on that penthouse he's been bragging about. Turns out the Tesla is leased, the fancy clothes are bought on credit, and he's about 6 months away from bankruptcy. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Talia doesn't know. Talia doesn't know a lot of things, like the fact that Erik's been running the same scam on wealthy married women for years. He targets wives who are unhappy with their middle-class lives, promises them a glamorous future, and then bleeds them dry before moving on to the next mark. Casey pulled a manila envelope from her jacket and slid it across the table. Photos, bank records, phone transcripts, everything you need to prove that your wife is being played by a professional con artist. I opened the envelope and started flipping through the contents. Photos of Erik with at least 3 different women over the past year, all of them married, all of them clearly infatuated with him. Bank records showing massive debts and a pattern of sudden cash deposits that corresponded with his various affairs. Phone transcripts that made it clear he was running multiple cons simultaneously. "Why are you giving this to me?" I asked. "Because Linda Blaine feels sorry for you. She went through the same thing 2 years ago, except she was smart enough to hire a PI before she filed for divorce. She wants to make sure you don't get screwed the way she almost did." "What's in it for her?" Casey's smile turned predatory. "Erik's been hiding assets from her divorce proceedings. If we can prove he's been running cons, she can go after everything he's stolen from his marks, including whatever he's planning to take from your wife. So we help each other." "Exactly. You get revenge on the people who are trying to destroy your life, and Linda gets her cheating husband's hidden assets. Everybody wins, except the bad guys." I studied the photos again, my anger building with each image. Erik with his arm around a redhead at an expensive restaurant. Erik kissing a brunette in the parking garage of a luxury hotel. Erik laughing with Talia at what looked like the same restaurant where he'd taken the redhead. "There's something else," Casey said. "Your wife's business partner, Vivian Drake, she's been skimming money from their decorating business. We're talking about serious embezzlement, maybe $50,000 over the past year." Jesus Christ. It gets better. Vivian's been feeding information about potential marks to Erik. Rich, unhappy wives who might be susceptible to his particular brand of charm. She gets a cut of whatever he steals from them. The pieces were falling into place now. Talia hadn't just stumbled into an affair. She'd been deliberately targeted by a team of professional criminals who saw her as a way to get at my money. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Keep playing the clueless husband for now. Let them think their plan is working. In the meantime, I need you to document everything. Every conversation, every suspicious activity, every piece of evidence that proves what they're doing." "I'm already doing that." "Good, because we're going to need everything we can get when this goes to court. Erik and Vivian aren't just cheaters, they're criminals, and we're going to make sure they pay for what they've done." I finished my beer and stood up to leave, the manila envelope tucked under my arm like a loaded weapon. "One more thing," Casey said. "Be careful. These people have already shown they're willing to destroy your life to get what they want. If they figure out that you're on to them, they might escalate." "Let them try," I said. "I've been dealing with scumbags my entire career. The only difference is that these scumbags used to be my family." I drove home that night with my head spinning and my heart pounding. Talia was in the living room when I walked in, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and her laptop. She looked up when I entered, and for a moment I saw a flicker of guilt in her eyes. "Where have you been?" she asked. "Murphy's. Had a beer with some of the guys from work." "That place is disgusting." "Yeah, well, it's where people like me belong, right?" She didn't answer, just turned back to her laptop. I could see she was looking at real estate listings, probably planning her new life with Erik, the life she was going to fund with my money. "I'm going to bed," I said. "Jordan?" She looked up again, and for a second I thought she might confess everything. "Tell me about Erik, about the con, about how sorry she was for betraying our marriage." Instead, she said, We should probably start talking about how we're going to handle this divorce, like adults. Sure, I said. Like adults. I went upstairs and lay in bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to Talia type on her laptop downstairs. She was probably texting Erik or Vivian or maybe both of them, planning their next move in the game they thought they were winning. What they didn't know was that the game had already changed. They weren't the hunters anymore. They were the prey. The next morning, I woke up to find Talia already gone. A note on the kitchen counter said she had an early meeting with a client, but I knew better. She was probably having breakfast with Erik, celebrating how well their plan was working. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, going through Casey's evidence one more time. The photos were damning enough, but the financial records were what really told the story. Erik Blaine was a professional predator, and my wife was just his latest victim. The irony was that while she thought she was using him to escape her middle-class life, he was using her to fund his fake lifestyle. My phone rang. Talia. Jordan, I need you to sign some papers today. What kind of papers? Just some business documents. Vivian's lawyer drew them up. Something about liability insurance for the decorating business. I almost laughed out loud. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. I'll need to have my lawyer look at them first. That's not necessary. They're just standard forms. Talia, I don't sign anything without having it reviewed. You know that. There was a long pause. Fine, but I need them back by tomorrow. This is important for my business. I'll do my best. After she hung up, I called my lawyer, Tom Harrison. Tom was an old-school attorney who'd been practicing in this town for 30 years. He'd handled the legal work when I started my business, and he'd been straight with me from day one. Jordan, good to hear from you. How's the family? That's actually why I'm calling. Talia and I are getting divorced. Another long pause. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you need representation? I need more than that. I need someone who knows how to handle a complicated case involving fraud and embezzlement. Jesus, what's she done? I gave him the condensed version. The affair, the con artist, the business partner who was stealing money, the plan to take me for everything I was worth. Bring me everything you have, Tom said. And I mean everything. Bank records, photos, recordings, the works. If what you're telling me is true, we're not just talking about divorce. We're talking about criminal charges. I spent the rest of the morning gathering documents, financial records going back 5 years, business contracts, insurance policies, tax returns, everything that proved how much I was actually worth and how hard I'd worked to build it. At noon, Vivian Drake showed up at my office with the papers Talia had mentioned. She was a thin woman with sharp features and cold eyes, the kind of person who looked like she'd been born wearing a business suit. Jordan, so good to see you again, she said, but her smile was as fake as Erik's tan. Vivian, Talia said you had some documents for me to sign. Just routine business forms, insurance liability, partnership agreements, that sort of thing. I flipped through the papers. They weren't insurance forms at all. They were loan documents, using my business as collateral for a $200,000 line of credit. If I signed them, Talia and Vivian would have access to enough money to disappear forever. These aren't insurance forms, I said. Well, they're related to insurance. We need the line of credit to pay for expanded coverage. $200,000 worth of expanded coverage? Vivian's smile flickered. The decorating business is growing very quickly. We need to be prepared for larger projects. I'll have my lawyer review them and get back to you. Jordan, please. This is time sensitive. We have a major client who's ready to sign a contract, but we need this financing in place first. I looked at her carefully, noting the way her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. She was nervous, which meant they were getting desperate. I said I'll have my lawyer review them. Fine. Vivian snatched the papers back. But if we lose this client because of your paranoia, Talia's going to be very upset. I'll take that risk. After she left, I called Casey Murphy. They just tried to get me to sign loan documents using my business as collateral, I told her. How much? 200,000. Casey whistled. They're moving faster than I expected. That suggests they know their time is running out. What do you mean? Erik's ex-wife filed for divorce yesterday. If he's smart, he'll realize that his whole operation is about to be exposed. He's probably trying to grab as much cash as possible before everything falls apart. So what do? We speed up our timeline. How quickly can you get those divorce papers filed? Tom Harrison said he could have them ready by tomorrow. Do it, and make sure you include everything we've discussed. The affair, the fraud, the embezzlement. Hit them with everything at once before they know what's happening. That evening, Talia came home in a foul mood. She slammed the front door and threw her purse on the kitchen counter hard enough to rattle the dishes. Vivian said you wouldn't sign the papers. That's right. Why are you being so difficult? This is important for my career. Your career as what? A con artist's accomplice? The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. Talia's face went white, then red, then white again. What are you talking about? I know about Erik, Talia. I know what he really is, and I know what you and Vivian have been planning. For a moment, she looked like she might deny everything. Then her expression hardened into something ugly and unfamiliar. You don't know anything. I know Erik's married. I know he's broke. I know he's been running the same scam on married women for years, and I know Vivian's been helping him target his marks. You're paranoid. Am I? Then explain the loan documents. Explain why you need $200,000 in business financing for a decorating company that barely makes $50,000 a year. Talia's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She was caught, and she knew it. It's not what you think, she said finally. Then tell me what it is. Erik's going through a rough patch financially. He just needs some help getting back on his feet. With my money, it would be a loan. We'd pay it back. Like hell you would. You'd take the money and disappear, leaving me to pay off the debt while you and your boyfriend start fresh somewhere else. Talia's facade finally cracked completely. So what if we would? You think I want to spend the rest of my life in this dump, married to a man who smells like industrial cleaner and thinks dinner at Applebee's is fine dining? There it is. The truth. Yes, the truth. I'm tired of being poor. I'm tired of being embarrassed by my husband's job. I'm tired of pretending that love is enough when there are men out there who can give me the life I deserve. The life you deserve, I repeated, built on stolen money and fraud. Built on being smart enough to take opportunities when they present themselves. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized that the woman I'd fallen in love with had been gone for years. This creature standing in my kitchen was someone else entirely, someone I didn't recognize and didn't want to know. Pack your bags, I said quietly. What? Pack your bags and get out of my house, tonight. You can't throw me out. I live here too. Not anymore. As of tomorrow morning, you're going to be served with divorce papers. Papers that include evidence of your adultery, your fraud, and your conspiracy to steal from me. If you're smart, you'll disappear before the police start asking questions. Talia stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something like fear flicker in her eyes. You bastard. Maybe. But I'm a bastard who's about to own everything you thought you were going to steal. She turned and ran upstairs. I heard drawers slamming and closet doors banging as she threw her belongings into suitcases. 20 minutes later, she came back down with 3 bags and her laptop. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is. She started toward the door, then turned back. You'll never find anyone else. You know that, right? You're going to fade alone in this house, surrounded by the smell of other people's garbage. Better alone than with a thief. After she left, I sat in my kitchen and finished my beer in blessed silence. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I could breathe again. My phone buzzed, a text from Casey Murphy. Erik just booked a flight to Miami for tomorrow night. Looks like they're planning to run. I smiled and typed back, not if I can help it. The game was almost over, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I was winning. The next morning, I was sitting in Tom Harrison's office at 8 o'clock sharp, watching him flip through the mountain of evidence I'd assembled. Financial records, photos, recorded conversations, bank statements, everything that proved my wife and her accomplices had been planning to destroy my life. "This is incredible," Tom said, shaking his head. "I've seen some nasty divorces in my time, but this is criminal conspiracy." "Can we stop them?" "Oh, we can do more than stop them. We can destroy them." Tom leaned back in his chair. "The adultery alone is enough to void any claim she might have to your assets under Ohio law. Add in the fraud and conspiracy charges, and she'll be lucky if she doesn't end up in prison." "What about Erik and Vivian?" "The private investigator's evidence is solid. Wire fraud, conspiracy to commit theft, embezzlement. The FBI is going to love this case." My phone rang. Talia, of course. "Jordan, we need to talk." "Talk to my lawyer." "Please, I made a mistake. We can work this out." I looked at Tom, who was grinning like a shark. "Put her on speaker," he whispered. "Okay, Talia, let's talk. Tell me about this mistake you made." "Erik isn't who I thought he was. Vivian showed me some things about his past, and I realize now that I was being used." "What kind of things?" "He's married. He's broke. He's been lying to me about everything." Tom was frantically scribbling notes. In Ohio, recorded phone conversations were admissible in court as long as one party consented, and I was definitely consenting. "So you're saying you were the victim of a con game?" "Yes, exactly. We were both victims." "Both victims of what exactly?" "Of Erik's lies, of his manipulation. Jordan, I never meant for any of this to happen. I was just so unhappy, and he made me feel special, and I lost sight of what was really important." "Which was what?" "Our marriage, our family, everything we built together." I had to admire her performance. If I didn't know better, I might have believed she was genuinely remorseful. "What about the loan documents? The $200,000 you and Vivian tried to steal from my business?" Long pause. "That was Vivian's idea. She convinced me that Erik needed help, that it would just be a temporary loan. A temporary loan secured by my business assets, without my knowledge or consent. I know how it looks, but I swear to you, I never intended to hurt you financially." Tom was practically bouncing in his chair. Every word out of Talia's mouth was another nail in her legal coffin. "Where are you now?" I asked. "I'm at Vivian's house. Jordan, she's been manipulating me too. I think she's been stealing money from our business." "You think?" "I found some documents in her office. Bank transfers, cash withdrawals, things that don't match our books. I think she's been embezzling from us for months. Now she was trying to throw Vivian under the bus to save herself. Classic criminal behavior when the walls start closing in." "How much money are we talking about?" "Maybe $50,000. Maybe more. Jordan, I had no idea. I trusted her completely." "The same way you trusted Erik?" "Yes. I know I made terrible mistakes, but I was being manipulated by people I thought were my friends." Tom held up a piece of paper with a single word written on it. "Trap." "Talia, if you're really sorry, if you really want to make this right, then you need to help me stop them before they hurt anyone else." "What do you mean?" "I mean you need to help me get evidence of what Erik and Vivian have been doing. Real evidence that we can take to the police." "I don't know if I can do that." "Why not? If they've been using you, if they've been stealing from both of us, don't you want to see them pay for it?" Another long pause. "What would I have to do?" "Meet with Erik tonight. Wear a wire. Get him to confess to the con game, to his plans to steal my money, to everything he's done to other women." "He'll never admit to any of that." "He will, if he thinks you're still on his side. Tell him I'm getting suspicious. Tell him you need to accelerate the timeline. Tell him whatever you have to say to get him talking. And if I do this, if I help you get evidence against Erik and Vivian, then maybe we can work something out. Maybe we can avoid a messy divorce that destroys both of us. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head. She was calculating the odds, trying to figure out if betraying her accomplices was her best shot at avoiding prison. Okay, she said finally. I'll do it. Good. I'll call you back in an hour with the details. After I hung up, Tom was shaking his head in amazement. That was beautiful, he said. She just confessed to adultery, conspiracy, and knowledge of embezzlement, all while trying to negotiate her way out of trouble. Will it hold up in court? Are you kidding? She just handed us everything we need to destroy her. And if she actually goes through with wearing a wire, we'll have Erik and Vivian too. She won't go through with it. Probably not. But it doesn't matter. We already have enough to bury all three of them. Tom was right. By the time we finished filing the paperwork that afternoon, Talia's life as she knew it was over. The divorce papers included detailed allegations of adultery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and knowledge of embezzlement. More importantly, they included a restraining order that froze all of our joint assets and prevented her from accessing any of my business accounts. At 5 o'clock, a process server delivered the papers to Vivian's house, where Talia was still hiding out. At 5:30, my phone started ringing. "You snake!" Talia screamed. "You tricked me!" I learned from the best. That recording won't hold up in court. Want to bet? Ohio's a one-party consent state, remember? I can record any conversation I'm part of without your permission. You can't freeze our assets. I have rights. Not anymore. You lost those rights when you committed adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Check your email. I hung up and waited. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. What the hell is this? Talia's voice was shaking now. That's a copy of the evidence we're turning over to the FBI tomorrow morning. Photos, bank records, recorded conversations, everything that proves what you and your friends have been doing. You're bluffing. Am I? Why don't you call Erik and ask him how he feels about spending the next 10 years in federal prison for wire fraud? The line went silent. An hour later, Casey Murphy called. Erik just tried to board his flight to Miami, she said. Airport security detained him when his credit cards were declined. Turns out his bank accounts were frozen this morning as part of his ex-wife's divorce proceedings. What about Vivian? She's in the wind, cleaned out the business accounts and disappeared sometime this afternoon. But don't worry, we'll find her. And Talia? Still at Vivian's house, as far as I know. But the house is empty now, so she's probably trying to figure out her next move. I sat in my kitchen that evening, drinking a beer and watching the sun set through the window. For the first time in months, the house felt peaceful. No arguments, no lies, no tension thick enough to cut with a knife. My phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number. You win. I hope you're happy. I typed back, I'm getting there. The next morning, I woke up to find my driveway empty and my house quiet. Talia's car was gone, along with any trace that she'd ever lived here. She'd taken her clothes, her jewelry, her laptop, and her lies, leaving behind only the faint scent of her perfume and the memory of 19 years that had ended in betrayal. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, reading the morning paper like I used to do before my life became a war zone. The front page had a story about a local interior decorator who'd been arrested for embezzlement. Vivian Drake, the article said, had been caught trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands with $50,000 in cash. My phone rang. Tom Harrison. Jordan, I've got good news and better news. Which do you want first? Give me the good news. Erik Blaine was arrested this morning on federal fraud charges. Turns out your case was just the tip of the iceberg. The FBI found evidence that he's been running similar cons in 3 different states. And the better news? Talia signed the divorce settlement. No contest, No demands for alimony, no claims on your business or assets. She gets her personal belongings and nothing else. Where is she now? Nobody knows. She signed the papers through a lawyer in Cleveland and disappeared. Frankly, I think she's scared that the FBI is going to come after her next. Are they? Probably. But that's not your problem anymore. Tom was right. Whatever happened to Talia now was between her and the federal justice system. I'd done what I needed to do to protect myself and my business. The rest was out of my hands. I spent the rest of the day cleaning house, literally and figuratively. I changed the locks, canceled the credit cards, updated the insurance policies, and removed Talia's name from every account and document I could find. It was like erasing a person from existence, which in a way, I guess I was. That evening, I drove out to Murphy's bar for a beer and found Casey Murphy waiting for me at the same corner table where this whole thing had started. "Thought you might want to know how it all turned out," she said. "I'm listening." Erik's looking at 10 to 15 years. Vivian's looking at 5 to 10. And Talia? What about her? She's cooperating with the FBI, testifying against Erik and Vivian in exchange for immunity. Smart move. Maybe. Or maybe she's just a survivor. Either way, she's out of your life for good. Casey finished her beer and stood up to leave. "One more thing. Linda Blaine wanted me to give you this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $25,000. "What's this for?" Erik had been hiding money in offshore accounts. When the FBI seized his assets, they found cash that he'd stolen from his various marks. "Linda thought you deserved a share, considering what he put you through." I stared at the check, thinking about everything that had happened. 6 months ago, I'd been a happily married man with a successful business and a family I thought I could trust. Now I was divorced, alone, and $25,000 richer. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said. "What?" "Talia always said I was holding her back from the life she deserved. Turns out I was the only thing standing between her and prison." Casey laughed. "Ironic, isn't it? She threw away a good marriage for a con artist who was planning to steal her money and disappear. She got exactly what she deserved. And you got your life back." I raised my beer in a toast. "To getting what we deserve." "To getting what we deserve," Casey agreed. 6 months later, I was sitting in the same kitchen where this whole nightmare had started, reading a newspaper article about Erik Blaine's sentencing. 12 years in federal prison for wire fraud, conspiracy, and theft. Vivian Drake had gotten 7 years. Talia had walked away with immunity and a new identity somewhere in witness protection. My business was thriving. Without the constant stress of a failing marriage, I'd been able to focus on expanding my client base and hiring new employees. I'd bought a new truck, renovated the house, and even started dating again. The best part was the silence. No more arguments, no more lies, no more walking on eggshells around someone who saw me as an obstacle to her happiness. Just peace, quiet, and the satisfaction of knowing that I'd won the most important fight of my life. My phone rang. A potential new client wanting to discuss a commercial cleaning contract for a chain of restaurants. As I talked through the details and scheduled a meeting, I realized that this was what victory looked like. Not revenge, not destruction, but the simple ability to build something good without someone trying to tear it down. I hung up the phone and finished my coffee, already planning my day. There was work to do, money to be made, and a life to be lived. A clean life, built on honest work, and surrounded by people who respected what I'd accomplished. Talia had been right about one thing. She had outgrown our marriage. But what she'd never understood was that some things are worth more than money or status or the approval of people who don't matter. Things like integrity,